Welcome to the Gist on StratNewsGlobal. I'm Surya Gangadharan. Good evening. External Affairs Minister Jaishankar was in Iran for 2 days for discussions on obviously bilateral issues and a whole lot of other issues relating to the region. I have with me Ambassador Dilip Sinha. He was heading the Iran, Pakistan, Afghanistan division in the Ministry of External Affairs for many years. He's also been an ambassador in Greece and in Geneva. Ambassador Sinha, welcome. Glad to have you.
Thank you, Surya. Thank you for having me on your show.
So, broad takeaways from Mr. Jaishankar's visit. What's your sense?
Well, what's come out in the media is that there's been an agreement on Chahbahar. And this has been there for quite some time. So if we have made any progress, there have been many false starts in the past.
Absolutely.
But one hopes that this time there will be some progress. And I believe also that the Houthi issue was discussed, the safety of the merchant shipping across the Red Sea, where the Houthis are attacking. I believe that too was discussed, and India's concerns were raised with Iran by the foreign minister.
Mm-hmm. So let's look at Chahbahar. As you mentioned, it's been there on the agenda, on the table for years. Some work has happened, yet things don't really seem to take off. So what is the problem here?
Well, there are many issues here, issues both at the end of Iran as well as in Central Asia itself. The developments in Afghanistan, which automatically affected Chahbahar. And of course, our own hesitation in going ahead in a big way with Chahbahar, given the fact that the Americans have sanctions on Iran, and that affects several Indian companies. So we have to keep looking over our shoulder at the US to see that it doesn't affect any companies. So all these factors have kept this project as a jinxed project, despite some element of good wishes on both sides, both Iran and India, and perhaps also in the Central Asian countries. It has not really made much headway.
Mm-hmm. Is it, would you say the area around where Chahbahar is located, is there an issue there? It's, Balochistan is there, Sistan Balochistan, which is an area that is problematic for Iran in many ways.
Yes, that's what I meant when I said that there are internal issues in Iran which affect the development of Chahbahar port. Chahbahar is in this eastern province of Iran. It's called Sistan Balochistan. So it's essentially, the people are Baloch, they're not Iranians, and they are Sunnis. They have issues with, well, they often help the Baloch people in Pakistan, which means that the border between Pakistan's Balochistan province and Sistan Balochistan is a tense border. There are these groups, freedom fighters in Balochistan who are based in Sistan Balochistan. And then there are people from Sistan Balochistan who take shelter in Balochistan because the Iranians are pursuing them. So this region is disturbed for both Iran and for Pakistan. And that makes Iran look at Sistan Balochistan more as a province of trouble where it has to maintain law and order and maintain a strict control, than as a province to develop into a major area for allowing its own development and transit across to Afghanistan and Central Asia. So that hesitation has always been at the back of Iran's minds. And while Iran is okay with the port coming up, it is the connectivity, what's called the International North-South Trade Corridor, the INSTC, which needs to be developed before Chahbahar port, for Chahbahar port to become an important entrepot for Central Asia. And if you would have noticed, our foreign minister had gone to Russia shortly before he went to Iran. And in this INSTC, the North-South corridor, Russia and India and Iran, all three are engaged, and all three are trying to promote that. So yes, there is that issue of Sistan Balochistan's ethnicity that affects the development of Chahbahar port.
Is this something the Iranians and the Indians talk about? I mean, the fact that, what do we actually want in through this port? We talk about trade, connectivity to Central Asia. It's a bit of a backwater. And when you look at Afghanistan, it's a black hole. So, what are we trying to achieve through this corridor?
Well, what you say about Afghanistan and Central Asia is correct to a great degree. Afghanistan is a black hole, has become a black hole. We put in a lot of money, and the whole world had tried to develop Afghanistan
Yeah,
for
$3
almost
billion.
two decades. Exactly, and yeah, we put in so much money. The whole world put in money, and yet everything went to naught with the coming back of the Taliban. So that was the biggest setback, because that was one of the most important reasons why we were prepared to put in a lot of money and energy behind Chabahar's development. So Afghanistan is one factor. Then there is Central Asia. Now, Central Asia also is a rather small region. The GDP of all the 5 countries put together does not reach up to $500 billion. It is also a bit of a backwater of the whole world. India's trade is very nominal. Plus, we have connectivity issues. But the fact remains that both Afghanistan and Central Asia are extremely important for us because they are in our neighborhood. We have traditional historical relations with these countries. These countries are rich in resources, which we need. And also the fact that they are in our neighborhood makes it strategically important for us to have good relations with these countries and to have these countries develop as well. So for all these reasons, we are interested in developing Chahbahar port and the connectivity to Afghanistan and Central Asia, largely because Pakistan just refuses to give us transit. So with Pakistan being a barrier, like a great wall between us and Central Asia, the only option for us is to go through Chahbahar. There is one opening that has come through, not for Central Asia. Well, Azerbaijan is close to Central Asia, and we are importing oil from Azerbaijan, but Azerbaijan has access to the Mediterranean through the Caucasus and Turkey, and that enables us to trade with that. So Central Asia is also trying to develop the access to the Mediterranean to the west. But for us, what's important is Chahbahar. And I think despite all the difficulties and all the pessimism that surrounds the region and its politics, we have to keep trying simply because it's in our neighborhood.
And the fact that the Chinese would otherwise take over or move in.
Well, China has a very difficult relationship with Central Asia. Its relationship is historically very adversarial. And
Yeah.
even today, its interest in Central Asia is as much for its natural resources, as much for its connectivity to Europe, as well as strategically because China is concerned about its own stability, or the stability of its western frontier. Remember, all the western provinces of China are non-Han people. Xinjiang is
Yeah.
Uyghur, then there are the Mongols, and there are other communities, all of which are ethnically closer to Central Asia than they are to China. And a lot of the Uyghurs gets a shelter in Central Asia. So for China, keeping Central Asia quiet and friendly is extremely important. Otherwise, all its western provinces will be up in flames. So for China, there's also the factor of the connectivity. They developed that rail route across to Duisburg in Germany. But that has been, there's a spanner in the works because of the Ukraine war and relations between Russia and Europe becoming bad, and sanctions on Russia. So that great dream of China to have a freight going across the Asian continent to Europe, that has become a bit of gotten a bit of a jam. But nonetheless, the possibility is always there, and if relations improve, it can utilize that. And then, of course, the resources in Central Asia, both oil and other valuable resources. India gets 80% of its uranium from Kazakhstan. And then for China, connectivity through Central Asia to the Middle East is also extremely important because China is dependent upon the Middle East for its oil. And China knows that in times of trouble, its sea routes through South Asia, to the South China Sea and the Indian Ocean may get into trouble. So it has been developing its connectivity to Iran to import oil, and its oil imports from Iran have increased considerably, and all that goes through Central Asia. So for China, Central Asia is strategically very important. But for China, the problem is that China, while we may not see our relationship with China as adversarial, necessarily adversarial, China certainly sees that as a zero-sum game. We have seen that in the Maldives. The first thing that China-supported president comes
Yeah,
and does in
yeah.
Maldives is to throw out a few people of our army who are maintaining their own defense equipment for them. So China has that suspicion that any other country that comes around in the region is out there to harm its interests. So in Central Asia, also remember there was the SCO summit in India, in
Yeah,
which China did not participate in, and
yeah,
soon after that, China held a separate summit with the Central Asian leaders in Xi'an, where it announced a huge $3 billion aid, or $300 billion aid, a huge amount of aid to the Central Asian republics. So China does not see its relationship with Central Asia as a cooperative relationship in which other countries of the region, say the SCO members, can also participate. It sees its relationship with these countries as a very jealous lover who doesn't want
mhm,
any other suitor to be seen around. And that is important, and we have to keep this in mind when we try and develop our relations with Central Asia, that any step that we take will be seen by China as adversarial.
So, how would you define Iran's relationship with China? They signed a huge arms deal some years ago, and they seem to be on a very cooperative, strategic track. Where does India figure in this? How do the Iranians see us?
Well, Iran has certainly become very friendly with China, and in fact, right now you can say that there is the Eastern Quad, which consists of Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran, because Iran is its foreign policy is totally in line with the foreign policy of Russia and China. Iran is giving weapons to Russia for the Ukraine war. Iran is giving weapons to the Houthis and to Hezbollah, and clearly with the blessings of China. China had influence enough on Iran to persuade it to get into a deal with Saudi Arabia, and there was this
Yeah.
China
Oh,
brokered great peace agreement coming through between Iran and Saudi Arabia. That itself has not made much progress, but Iran did listen to China enough on that. Iran's oil exports to China have increased phenomenally, and in fact, one of the reasons why the U.S. sanctions on Iran are not working at all is because Iran now has a ready market in China.
yeah.
And
Mhm.
China's exports to Iran have also increased because China is good in manufacturing. So whatever consumer goods Iran needs can come in from China. So this U.S. sanctions against Russia, on Russia and Iran, and the U.S. Differences with China and the strategic competition that's taking place between those two countries has led to this Eastern Quad, which is not merely for strategic reasons, but also has become a great economic uh, zone or an economic area where there's a lot of cooperation taking place and trade taking place between China, Russia, and Iran. And Iran is obviously very happy with it because uh, Iran is under sanctions from the US, and most Western countries, especially West European countries, of course, stay away. And other countries like India are hesitant to get in a big way because of the American sanctions.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
how does Iran see India? I don't know if Iran sees India as in any significant way because it is really cut off from India. Uh, its interest is right now focused entirely on the Western side over Israel and Saudi Arabia and China. Its trade with India is minimal. India doesn't have any investments in the oil fields as it used to have. Now with Chabahar coming up, one hopes that Iran will start taking a little bit of interest in this region and realize that on the Western side, while there are disturbances, there is a lot of possibility of economic cooperation taking place through the Eastern side. And one of the ways in which to improve relations with India is to go for the Chahbahar port. And perhaps the US also may be willing to let this go ahead because the US itself wants an opening to Central Asia. Its attempts to get that through that Caucasus route has its limitations. And besides, if any opening India makes with Iran is useful for the West also, because otherwise Iran goes completely into the China camp.
The Chinese camp, yeah.
So, yeah, so I suppose it, we can uh, we can get into this idea that in this region at least we should pursue an independent policy in which we take care of our interests, and while reassuring the West that none of this is going to harm Western interests, certainly not the economic interests, and nor will it affect the cooperation between India and the West, because our leading market and our economic cooperation is largely with the West.
Yeah. So, last question. The joint statement issued at the end of Jaishankar's visit also had a reference to terrorism and also the fact that there have been attacks on ships in the vicinity of India's waters. When we make those references to the Iranians, how do you think they are reacting to this, and what are their stakes here?
Well, Iran looks at this whole episode of the Houthis and Hezbollahs totally with the perspective of Israel and its adversarial relations with the Arab countries, because Iran looks at Hezbollah and the Houthis as its two main proxies in the region, which keeps the Arab countries and Israel on their toes.
On age, yeah.
And Iran will not give them up because they are extremely important strategically for Iran. It did the same thing in Syria, where it intervened and ensured that its interests were protected, and countries like the other Arab countries and Turkey were kept at bay, as also the US. Now, this, of course, makes it very difficult for us because the Houthis are now attacking ships in the Red Sea and the
Yeah.
Gulf of Aden. And any kind of escalation of this activity will also encourage the old Somali pirates and other kinds of elements in this region, which will be quite happy to fish in troubled waters. And our trade goes a lot of our trade goes through the Red Sea and the Suez Canal, especially the trade to Europe. So it's very important for us. Besides, it's in our neighborhood, and it's very important for us to have peace in the region. So this is well known that the Houthis are supported by Iran. If the matter escalates and if Iran jumps into the fray, then obviously there'll be a major war in the Arabian Sea, because the Americans have their bases all along the Arabian Peninsula, and most of it is directed against Iran.
Yeah.
So it is in our interest to ensure that Iran understands the danger, that in the process of trying to harm Israel, it should not harm the other countries in the region. And here we should make our views clear to Iran, while at the same time reassuring Iran that we will ensure that Iran's economic interests are not hurt, while at the same time Iran should not try to destabilize the whole region by encouraging these elements like the Hamas, the Hezbollah, and the Houthis. So it is a very difficult time for India in this region. The Iranians are extremely, if I may use the word, arrogant. Actually, they get they're very unpredictable in their responses and their behavior. So one has to play it calmly. The Americans also can be very, very, very harsh with the Iranians because they have very little patience with the Iranians. But at the same time, we have to realize that Iran is a major power, and it will have the support of Russia and China in case a conflict breaks out in this region, and that would be a disaster for the whole region. So whatever we can do to reassure the countries of the region and keep tensions, lower tensions, would be very useful. And in the process, try and see if we can get our interest like Chabahar port getting through. Would be a kind of confidence building measure that reassures the countries of this region that the future is brighter for all of us by focusing on the economy and trade rather than on strategic conflict situations.
Final question. Do you think Jaishankar would have talked to the Iranians about some of those attacks that have happened in India in the past? Near the Israeli embassy. More recently, there was one behind the Israeli embassy. Some Iranian hand is suspected. Do you think these things are raised during diplomatic, exchanges?
Well, I'm not aware of any reports coming out that there's an Iranian hand. If we have any evidence of that, then of course we must take it up very strongly, if quietly, with Iran. But we should certainly take it up because this is completely unacceptable. Uh,
Yeah.
if Iran is indulging in this kind of activity on Indian soil, then it's unacceptable. And the best way to take it up is to take it up quietly with Iranians and to not just advise them, but to warn them that this would not be tolerated. And if they get into this activity, then of course, then it would be a no holds barred, and there'd be no scope for any kind of consideration for Iran in this. We cannot, whatever the justification that Iran may have against Israel, etc., all that is there, but they cannot indulge in terrorist activities on our soil.
And as you just mentioned, they're also unpredictable. So you can never tell what direction they'll go down. Ambassador Sinha, pleasure talking to you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Surya.
That's all we have for you on the gist this evening. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on social media. Thank you very much. Good night.